Hello, my name is Stephen Austin. I'm a tutor for the Wayne State University Writing Center in Detroit, Michigan. This will be one of a series of tutorials that we have on writing, research, and paper formatting for specific styles. This one in particular covering Chicago style formatting and citation. Some of the sections that I'll have in the tutorial will be general paper format, so things like margin, font size, headings and subheadings, quotations, and formatting for quotations, so both the block quote and regular quote formats. Footnotes and endnotes, which Chicago style calls for to cite information in the body of your paragraph as well as at the end of it. So this will include in-text citations, how to use them and when to use them, as well as where to place them, and then the IBIDEM or IBID shorthand referencing tool, as well as general bibliographic elements, so formatting of your entries in your bibliography. It should be noted that the information found herein was acquired from the 16th edition of the Chicago Manual of Style, which is the definitive print resource for all things needed in Chicago style formatting and citation. Looking first at general paper formatting in Chicago style. First, just when to use Chicago style in general. So if you're unsure about what format your paper is supposed to be in, if it's for a class, always check your rubric if you get one with the paper assignment, or your syllabus. These are the two most common places to find what format papers are preferred to be in by the professor. And if you can't find in either a rubric or a syllabus the answer to what format you should be writing in, just check with your professor. If no specific format is given, or often professors won't have a preference, note that primarily these are the formats or disciplines that would use Chicago style: arts and humanities, histories, physical, natural, and social sciences. And then lastly, most academic journals require a Chicago format for material being submitted in its manuscript form that's intended for publication. So before submitting something for either peer review or publication in an academic journal, most commonly they require a Chicago style format. Headings and subheadings in Chicago papers are really up to the author. Authority is granted to the author on how the paper is divided. So it's really up to you to divide up with your headings and sections the paper as you see fit, so that it's most easily navigatable by the reader. When putting in a subheading or heading, be sure to include an extra line space both before and after the subheading, and do not use periods with your headings. There are 5 levels of headings that Chicago allows the use for, and I'm going to list them with the proper way that they're formatted. So level 1 heading is centered and in either boldface or italic type, and has headline style capitalization. Level 2 heading is centered, has headline style capitalization, but is not bold or italicized. A level 3 heading is flush left with boldface or italic type and headline style capitalization. A level 4 heading is flush left with just sentence style capitalization. And then a level 5 heading runs into the beginning of the paragraph with no blank line afterward, and it is in either boldface or italic type with sentence style capitalization and a terminal period. And just to clarify what headline style capitalization is specifically is that in most style guides call for lowercasing prepositions, articles, and most conjunctions. There are extenuating circumstances for these, but in general, a headline style capitalization follows lowercasing those specific parts of speech. Okay, turning now to quotations in Chicago style formatting. A prose quote that exceeds 5 lines in length should be blocked. I'm going to talk specifically about blocked quotes. quotes that are less than 5 lines in length occur within quotation marks, just in line with the rest of the body of the paragraph. Block quotes, however, are single-spaced and indented an additional 0.5 inches from the margin. Also, be sure to leave a line space both before and after the quote. So let's take a look at an example. This is how a block quote would appear in a body of text. So the first thing to notice is that both before and after the quote there is a line space. So the paragraph actually is beginning above the block quote, there's a line space, and then the quote itself begins. Also notice that the block quote is indented that additional 0.5 inches from the margin, so it's flush with the first indented line of the paragraph. Finally, also notice that when the paragraph resumes following the quote, it's not indented. And the reason for this is because the blocked quote, even though it has a different formatting with being single-spaced and has those line breaks, it still does occur within the text of the paragraph. So just like a quote that was less than 5 lines and therefore not blocked would be within the body of a paragraph, so too is the blocked quote. It just receives a little bit of formatting to make it clear and stand out. For emphasis, just like with MLA and APA, the words emphasis added are called for. However, with Chicago style, it occurs in the footnote section. So we'll take a look at an example. So here is the previous example that we looked at for the formatting on a citation. But this would be, rather than what we looked at before, the bibliographic note, this would be a footnote. And if something inside of the quote is altered to show emphasis, such as an italicized word, then you have to designate that you have altered the original formatting or the original information by adding the words emphasis added at the end of your citation. Regarding quotation punctuation, Chicago calls for punctuation marks inside of the quotation marks, with the exception of colons and semicolons. These are placed outside of quotation marks. Question marks and exclamation points depend on whether they clarify the meaning of the quotation, in which case they would be placed inside, or the surrounding sentence as a whole, which they would be placed outside. So you would place a question mark or exclamation point inside of the quotation marks if you were clarifying the meaning of the quotation within your text, within the paragraph, but outside of the quotation marks if your quotation occurs as part of a sentence with original wording. I'm going to turn now to the footnote and endnote citation rules for Chicago style. So Chicago style allows for both footnotes, which appear at the end of the page, and endnotes, which appear at the end of the document. Endnotes are called for when footnotes are exceedingly long and would therefore occupy a lot of space within the body of the paper, or when they extend beyond the length of the page to which they refer. So if you have a footnote that will occupy too much physical space on the actual page because the title of the work being cited is long, or the title of the work is long and it has a subtitle or many authors or whatever the reason is, if it's going to occupy too much space, and really anything more than 3 lines would be too much, you can then make it an endnote to move the citation to the back of the paper so that it frees up space for your actual text. And in that scenario, in some cases, a combination of footnotes and endnotes may prove useful. So you are allowed to use both footnotes and endnotes. So you can make, really based on just the physical length of a footnote, the call to make it an endnote if it's occupying too much space. But if you do have short footnotes, then you can absolutely have use of both. For formatting, the first line of the footnote is indented 0.5 inches from the left margin. Subsequent margins should be flush with the original 1-inch margin of the paper. Be sure to leave a line space between each footnote. So here is an example of how a footnote would appear at the end of a page for an in-text citation. Turning to in-text citations for Chicago formatting. In-text citations are accounted for with superscripted footnotes or endnotes. Just going to use the example of the two most common word processors. In Microsoft Word or Apple Pages, these are inserted via the Insert menu, which is found at the top. So we'll look at how to do that. So to insert a footnote, just select the location that you want to place the footnote in the document. Be sure that it is following the punctuation where the citation is going to be included. Click Insert at the top, and then Footnote. And you want the footnote to be at the bottom of the page. The default settings are fine. Click Insert, and you'll see that it will bring you down to the bottom of the page where you type your citation. The first time a citation appears in the paper, it is given a complete bibliographic note. So the first time that this source was cited inside of the paper would receive a note that looks like this, which is similar to the examples that we've already looked at. The author's name, the title of the work, publishing city and the publisher, as well as the year of the publication, and then finally the page number where the citation can be found. Subsequent citations are numbered sequentially and are given shortened entries. So for this example, using the same citation that we just previously looked at, you'll see that the citation is now numbered 2 because it'll be the second time that the citation is appearing, or the second time the source is appearing. These shortened entries are used to make referencing much easier on the reader. And they usually comprise the author's last name and a keyword version of the source title in 4 or fewer words. So in the example, we have the author's last name, then we have just one keyword of the title, which makes it obvious which work we're referencing, and then finally the page number. Chicago also allows for the use of cross-referenced examples. So for notes with repeated content, specifically longer notes, Chicago style offers this feature. So in this example, we have Foucault's The Means of Correct Training, and in the reference directly below, we see that it is simply referring to the reference above. This would be used if 2 separate pieces of information are being used from the same source and the same page. It would just refer the reader back to that original source. Again, the reason for this is to make it easier on the reader to navigate references so that they can do their own research or further reading based on the topic of the paper that's being read. Finally, we're going to look at another shorthand citation tool that Chicago style offers, and that is IBIDEM, or IBID. And the first thing to remember is that IBID is an abbreviation for a Latin word. IBIDEM translates to in the same place, which is precisely how it operates inside the use of Chicago formatting, but it's important to designate it as an abbreviation by including a period. So this is how, in your citations, it will appear in the paper. It's numbered 2 because it has to refer to the citation above it, which we'll talk about in just a second. But this is precisely how it'll appear in a footnote in the body of a Chicago format paper. IBID is used when the same source and page number is referenced consecutively within a passage. So if you have one source that has 2 clear ideas and you want to cite both of them and both are on the same page, then you would include the full citation the first time you use the source, and then the second time you use the source on the same page of your paper, you could just use IBID to refer the reader to the citation that you're just referencing the same source a second time. So what we'll do now is look at how a complete set of footnote citations will occur in a Chicago formatted paper. So note again, as I said before, the first citation must be a full citation. So we have the author's name and the title of the book, publishing city, and the publisher and the year, and then finally the page number. The second citation is just IBID. So what this is telling the reader is that you're referring to the same source that you referred to with the first citation. Now note in the third footnote there that IBID can also be used to reference the same source and different page numbers. So it still uses the abbreviation, but it denotes the different page number and is separated by a comma. So you see that the layout of the citation is IBID, comma 41. And what this is telling the reader is that the same source referenced in the first citation here is being referenced again, but just on a different page of the same work. I'm going to turn now briefly to Chicago documentation. There are 2 basic systems that are used when employing Chicago-style formatting. The first system is the notes and bibliography. This is by far the most common. It's most commonly used by the disciplines of arts, humanities, and histories, etc. The other system is the author date system. This is favored more commonly by the physical, natural, and social sciences. The one special thing to note about each of these systems is that they are flexible and they can vary depending on the venue for the writing. So, for example, academic journals, were you to submit a similar article hoping for peer review in two different publications or publication in 2 different publications, they may require a specific formatting that's subjective or individual to each journal. So it is useful to know both systems, or to at least be familiar with both systems, but the one that is by far the most common is the first system, the notes and bibliography system. Turning now to general bibliographic elements. All entries in your bibliography will include the author, or failing that, the editor, compiler, or translator, the title of the work being cited, and the public information. The author's name is inverted, so the last name will come first, and it is separated from the first name with a comma. Titles of books and journals are italicized. Articles, chapters and chapter titles, poems, etc. are placed in quotation marks. The year of the publication is listed after the publisher or the journal name. And regarding punctuation, for in-text citations, all major elements are separated by commas, whereas in the bibliography, all major elements are separated by periods. And so we'll take a look at an example of a bibliographic entry. So first, you see the author's last name has been inverted from the first and is separated from the first name with a comma. The title of the work is in italics. Following the title of the work is the publishing city and then the publisher. And then finally, the year of publication. This is an example of how an entry would appear in your bibliography using the Notes and Bibliography system. For details regarding the author date system, please check the extra resources that I'll provide at the end of the tutorial. So this is the conclusion of the basic introductory tutorial on Chicago-style formatting and citation. But I just wanted to include a couple of extra resources so that if you have any more specific questions that you might need answered, just a couple of places to go to perhaps find those answers quickly. So for specific formatting questions, such as a particular citation format, because things like YouTube is cited differently from an academic journal, is cited differently from a book, and so forth, I've included a kind of addendum to this tutorial on the Wayne State University WRT Zone website, where you can find an entry for each different specific format for both footnote and endnote, as well as bibliographic entries. For some further external resources, you can use the Chicago Manual of Style, which is the resource that I used to compile this tutorial. It is the definitive print resource, and it will address any question that you have on formatting for Chicago style. Anybody who's going to be walking a degree path that consistently asks for Chicago style would do well to have one of these on their bookshelves. It would be an invaluable resource. For an electronic alternative, you can visit the Purdue Online Writing Lab, and the URL is provided here. I'll also provide it on the WRT Zone website to go there as well. This is a very useful resource to have just bookmarked in your browser. It's updated bi-weekly for new mediums to be added. So in the past few years, we've seen Twitter and tweets become academic sources for citation in papers, as well as YouTube videos and things. And so as these new mediums develop and enter their way into academic discourse, then so too must citations in the various formats be developed for these as well. And so rather than waiting for the annual new edition in print, this is a fantastic and free resource to use in order to stay up to date with all of the various changing mechanics of formatting. So I want to thank you for watching. If you have still further questions or want to come make an appointment to sit down and see one of us in the Writing Center, we have a staff fully capable of answering any questions that you might have for Chicago or APA formatting or MLA formatting. So if the tutorials don't answer all of your questions, we would very much love to see you come in, and you can make an appointment through the website where you've found this tutorial video, as well as call us or email us. Both forms of contact are also on the main page, and we look forward to seeing you. Thanks so much.